to the Oakmont Volunteer Fire Department.
The first European to behold what we call the Allegheny Valley.
This is what it looked like in 1937.
I'd like to say, to any Vietnam veteran, welcome home.
It came down between two names, Hulton and Oakmont. You see that blue house on the corner?
From downtown Pittsburgh out to the Willows.
He drove the truck over Allegheny Avenue as fast as he could.
Before we start, how many people came over the bridge? Oh, a few. Okay, all right. Well, welcome. This is our October edition of our 2014 Celebrate Oakmont Speaker Series. Cities and towns are often identified by the bridges in their communities. New York City is home to the Brooklyn Bridge. San Francisco is known for the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Tower Bridge is a landmark in London. Although Oakmont is a small town, much smaller than most of those cities, for the past 105 years, it has been recognized as the home of the Hulton Bridge. The bridge was named for Jonathan Hulton. Jonathan Hulton was one of the early settlers here in Oakmont, and he owned the land down by the river, where the bridge stands today. I'd like to introduce, just say hello to Keith Hulton sitting over there, who is a direct descendant of Jonathan Hulton. So we still have old Jonathan's family still live in the area. In 1853, the Allegheny Valley Railroad built a train station on Jonathan Hulton's property. That was located right at the Hulton crossing at the boulevard. And that was the first train station along the line. As a result, people who lived on the other side of the river wanted to come over to the train. A lot of times if they had to go to Pittsburgh, they would want to come over here and ride the train, but there was no bridge from his home. And this is a picture of the original Hulton house. This was located at the foot of Hulton Road where the bridge now stands. This here picture is a ferry that was operated at the site by the Bain family. Now, Mr. Hulton operated his ferry from the Oakmont side, and the Bain family operated theirs from the Harmerville side. But they were at the same location. And if you look at this picture, you can see in the background, that's Oakmont over there, the flats of Oakmont, lower Oakmont, and then you can see the hillside over there coming down route where there's now Route 28. But this picture was taken right where the bridge crosses the river today. In 1908, when Allegheny County decided to build a new bridge, they chose that location at the Hulton crossing because by that time it had become a very busy ferry crossing there. So they decided that they would build a bridge there. And on August 11th, 1908, they put out a bid proposal in the Pittsburgh Press. And they asked for a bid on the construction of what they called Bridge Number 1 on the Allegheny River near Hulton Station. Now, as I said, this went out on August 11th, 1908. The bids were due just 2 weeks later, August 26th, when they were opened, and the bridge construction began September 8th. So in less than a month, they took the bids, looked them over. They awarded the contract to the American Bridge Company, and they were to supply 2,400 tons of steel for the superstructure. The Friday Construction awarded the bid to construct the abutment and the piers for the bridge. The total cost of the new bridge, $306,000, including labor, materials, construction. Now, $306,000 today will buy you a medium-sized house in Oakmont. 105 years ago, you could have bought the Hulton Bridge for that money. This bridge was the first major bridge that was constructed by Allegheny County. And it was meant to be a free public access bridge. Because you see, back then, a lot of the bridges around the Pittsburgh area were toll bridges. And they were owned by private companies. So if you wanted to use their bridge, you had to pay a toll. A group of people in Verona formed the Verona Bridge Company. And their plans were to build a bridge from Verona over to O'Hara Township. And it would go across the river at Grant Street, if you know where Grant Street is in Verona. However, they weren't able to obtain the investors, so they never did build that bridge. My father-in-law told the story. He grew up on Heron Hill, which is above the Strip District there in Pittsburgh. And this was back in the late teens, early 1920s. Well, his father had a cow that he raised in the backyard. And when it came time to butcher the cow, he and his father took it down the hill over to Hare's Island. The problem was when they went to cross the bridge to get to Hare's Island, they didn't have 25-cent toll for the cow. So my father-in-law had to run the whole way back up the hill, get a quarter so they could come back down and take the cow across the bridge. So back then it was very common for a lot of these bridges in Pittsburgh to be toll bridges. The Hulton Bridge is a 5-span through truss structure. It was designed by J.G. Chalfont, an Allegheny County engineer. The bridge deck is 1,544 feet in length, and the deck is 50 feet above the water level. Now, it's very interesting how they built this bridge. Today, we have the benefit of all the heavy equipment, the cranes, the diesel-powered equipment. Back then, they didn't have any of that. So this bridge was literally built by hand. And what they did was, you can see this structure here. The bridge is what they called a pin-connected bridge. And if you've ever driven across it, you've seen the beams that across there, and then there's those X's that hold it together. Well, with the construction of that bridge, it was so heavy that it couldn't support itself while it was under construction, because all those beams would have collapsed. So what they had to do is they built these huge trusses or derricks, and they suspended the superstructure in there and built it. And it was like they hung it in there, built it, and then when it was completed, locked together, that's when it obtained its strength and was able to hold the weight. And you can see in this picture, this is the last span which connects onto Route 28. If you look over, you can see that span is completed, and it's standing, and it's ready to go, it's locked together, and it's able to bear the weight, so it's sitting on the piers. Once they would start here and start working over, as I said, they would hang that in there. They did it all with pulleys and winches, cantilevers. All those steel beams is how they put them in place. And then they riveted them, and then some of them were tightened with bolts. What's interesting is, I found this sketch in an old report. This shows the bridge piers, and this shows you how much thought and planning they gave when they put the bridge up. And this is what Friday Construction had done. If you notice the two piers in the main channel, they're on an angle. The reason for that is the bridge is built on a river bend. And so they put those two piers on an angle to accommodate the river flow and cut down on the resistance of the river flowing by. And then as you can see, the other piers on each end and in the island channel are perpendicular to the deck. So if you ever go down there and you're able to get a good view from the park, you'll notice that those two bridge piers are on a slight angle, and that's the reason that they're like that. On June 10th, 1909, Victor Friday, who was the owner of Friday Construction Company, was inspecting one of the piers. Beams fell and struck him on the head, and he was killed instantly. Mr. Friday was the only fatality in the construction of the bridge. Now, his company had a fine reputation for building bridges here in Pittsburgh. They built the Charleroi Bridge on the Monongahela River, and if you've ever been down that way, that bridge was replaced, I think, in 2005, and it was very similar to the Hulton Bridge. They also did work on the Smithfield Street Bridge, and if you've ever been on Washington Avenue, the Larimer Avenue Bridge, which crosses over Washington Avenue, the company worked on that. I'm excited because I'd like to introduce two gentlemen here who are the grandsons of Victor Friday. Vic Friday III and his cousin Joe Lawson. Joe and Vic, if you stand up and say hello to everybody. I have to say, that would have to be a great feeling every time you cross that bridge, knowing that your grandfather helped build that bridge. But they're very close to the bridge. Joe lives over in Springdale, and Vic lives here in Oakmont. So it's good to have an attachment to that bridge that we can all, say we met the family of the people who built that bridge. The original bridge deck consisted of wooden blocks with the rough cut side up. The reason for this was when the horse and wagons would go across, the rough cut wood would provide traction for the horses to pull the wagon across. The sidewalk on the side was originally made of wooden planks, and the original plans called for streetcar tracks to go across the bridge. And their plans were they would connect the Wilkinsburg-Oakmont streetcar over into Harmerville, and then they would be able to service that side of the river. However, they couldn't make an agreement with the streetcar company, so they never installed streetcar tracks. As I said, they began construction on September 8th, 1908. The bridge was completed in just 14 months. It opened ahead of schedule in early November of 1909, and they had originally projected it to be open in the spring of 1910, but they finished it up early. And I don't know, that just amazes me that they built that bridge by hand and they only built it in 14 months. And if you've ever been sitting in traffic and just take the time to look at that bridge and all the construction that went into it. When the bridge was designed by Mr. Chalfant, the main mode of transportation was horse and wagon. This picture of Reed's lumber wagon from Oakmont. They had a lumber mill here in Oakmont at the time. If you stop and think about it, this wagon was probably one of the heavier vehicles to go across the bridge when it was first built. But what's amazing is, how could Mr. Chalfant even imagine, what an 18-wheeler was, and the buses, and the trucks, and the cars. And I read PennDOT's estimate, and they said 25,000 cars a day crossed the bridge. I thought that was a little high, but that's what they claimed. So he designed this bridge, and for 105 years, it's been able to sustain all that weight and all that traffic. And he had no idea what a new car would be like, or a truck. And I think that's a real testament to the men who built the bridge. One of the first motorists to cross the bridge was President William Howard Taft. During a visit to Pittsburgh on May 2nd, 1910, President Taft took an automobile tour out to Oakmont, where he crossed the bridge and went down through the communities of Aspinwall and Sharpsburg. President Taft was a frequent visitor to Pittsburgh because his wife's sister was married to Thomas Laughlin of Jones and Laughlin fame. And so they would come to visit, and every time he came to town, he always liked to take automobile tours of the Pittsburgh area. And I just wondered, did he like to take tours, or did he just want to get away from his in-laws? But he would always go for car rides. But this is a picture of President Taft, and that is Mayor William McGee, who was the mayor of Pittsburgh at the time. And they're in the back of a car going out to take a tour. Now, I don't know if this is the day they came out to Hulton Bridge, but this is one of the rides that they took in an automobile. When the bridge was first completed, it was the responsibility of the Oakmont Police Department to light the gas lights that illuminated it each night. They had to walk the beat, light the lights, and then first thing in the morning, they would go extinguish the gas lights. And that was one of the responsibilities that they had with taking care of the bridge. When it was originally built, at the Harmerville end, there was a set of steps that descended down to the trolley tracks that ran underneath it. This picture is it's not good quality, but you can see it says Oddfellows Band of Verona, Pennsylvania. So we don't know what this was, but I have a feeling this may have been the opening ceremony for the bridge, because I don't know why else they would be over there under the bridge. But it just gives you an idea of the steps and how you could cross the bridge and walk down to the train tracks. During World War II, the bridge was a target of possible sabotage. On December 22nd, 1941, just 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor was attacked, there were 3 men who were seen taking pictures of the Westinghouse Bridge and the Edgar Thomson Steel Works. Well, there were members of the Pennsylvania Reserve Defense Corps came out after them, but they got away. Later in the day, they showed up at the Hulton Bridge, and they were taking pictures. And someone called the Oakmont police. The Oakmont police went down and apprehended them. When they searched their car, they found photographic material, they found undeveloped film, and they found photographs of factories and bridges around the Pittsburgh area. So they called in the FBI. The FBI, J. Edgar Hoover sent his men, and never heard from them again. But what was interesting, after that incident, armed guards were posted at each end of the Hulton Bridge during World War II, just to make sure that no one would try to sabotage it. There have been a number of reported suicides from the bridge. The first was in the newspaper. The Pittsburgh Press reported, it was in 1915, that a pretty young girl from New Kensington jumped to her death from the Hulton Bridge. Over the years, there have been a number of people who have jumped off the Hulton Bridge. However, it has not always been deaths that occurred on the Hulton Bridge. On March 18th, 1986, a call came into the Verona Fire Department that a lady had unexpectedly gone into labor. And her family was passing through town, and they were in the parking lot of the Kogos, which is now the Get-Go, on the main street. Well, at the time, the Verona Fire Department had an ambulance, and they responded, and it was Jim Broderick, Jim Lohheide, and Keith Durkin. And so they put the lady in the ambulance, and they could see she didn't have much time, and they sped off to St. Margaret's. The only problem was it was Friday afternoon, and it was rush hour. And they got about halfway across the bridge, and little Rachel Louise Speck, weighing 5 pounds, 12 ounces, came into this world on the middle of the Hulton Bridge. On May 22nd, 1993, a call came into the Oakmont police station that someone had seen a man throw a baby off the bridge. So the police department quickly responded, and they found a man walking on the bridge. They approached him and they questioned him. They found out that he was returning from Laura Lane's over in Harmerville, and he had a bad day at the bowling alley, and he was so mad he threw his bowling ball off the bridge. So the bridge also attracted its share of daredevils. Thomas Hunter owned Hunter Brothers store down on the corner of Hulton Road. Well, he had a son by the name of Kenneth, and his nickname was Kelly. Kenneth liked to dive off the Hulton Bridge. And his father used to get very mad at him whenever he did it. And every time he tried, somebody would come running up to the store and say, "Kelly's going to jump off the bridge again." And old Tom would run down, but he was never able to stop him. And this is a picture of Ken jumping off the bridge. And he's not jumping, he's diving. If you see the picture, I don't know if you can tell. Dispatch in 1915 of him diving off the bridge. 50 feet. And 1915 was before we had the series of locks and dams. So the river wasn't as deep as it is today. But he survived every one and had a good time doing it. The bridge also attracted early airplane pilots. Back in the 1920s, a lot of them liked to fly their airplanes underneath the bridge. There was a gentleman who lived on Washington Avenue by the name of Bill Kennedy. And Bill was a pilot in World War I. Well, after the war, he came back, and he was, I guess you could call him one of the barnstormers. He liked to fly his plane and do stunts and things like that. And he was known for not only flying under the bridge, but he would do a loop-de-loop back down under again. And so people used to go down and watch Bill fly under the bridge. We did our oral histories a couple of years ago, and we found a tape of a gentleman by the name of Don McCandless. And Don and his buddy, Nelson Werner, used to go flying. And Nelson was the pilot, and Don would ride along with him. So he said one day Nelson decided he was going to fly under the bridge. And Don said that they were up 3,000 feet, however high they go, and he looked down at the bridge, and it looked like the bridge was literally sitting on the water. And down they came. And you have to stop and think, a plane in a dive is traveling, I don't know, any pilots here, 140 miles per hour, 120 miles per hour, coming down, and you have 50 feet between the bridge and the water. Too low, you're in the water. Too high, you're in the bridge. And he said they came down through there and made it under, no problem. Another pilot that told me that he flew under the bridge 1 or 2 times is a gentleman by the name of Jim Eaton. Jim is a member of our historical society. Jim has been a pilot for 70 years. I think he's now 94, 97. Yeah. Well, it just so happened that one day my great uncle happened to be down on the riverside, and he also happened to have his camera with him. And he could see this plane making a descent coming down to fly under the bridge. So he snapped a picture. And he said that it was Jim Eaton. Now, I don't know. I can't verify if in fact it was Jim. But no, Jim is a good guy. And he said, yeah, once or twice I flew under there. This is one of my favorite pictures of the bridge. This was taken from the Harmerville side up on the hill there, and you see the paddle wheel steamboat going underneath it. And also, if you look in the corner here, you can see the steps are still there. So that was an early picture of the bridge. But if you could sum up the Hulton Bridge in one word, I would say survivor. It is the second oldest bridge in the area, second only to the Smithfield Street Bridge. And through the years, it's always survived a number of attempts to be replaced. In 1956, the Pittsburgh Regional Planning Association recommended replacing the bridge. The group stated that the 50-year-old structure was outdated and needed to be replaced. However, no action was ever taken. In 1961, the state announced plans for a new Route 28 expressway, which would come up the valley. Part of the plans called for a bridge that would connect Oakmont right up onto the expressway. However, they didn't have the funding, so when they built the expressway, they eliminated the bridge. And the old Hulton Bridge survived one more time. 10 years later, State Representative Joseph Bonetto from Plum pushed for a new bridge to be built further upriver to replace the Hulton Bridge. And it just happened to be in his hometown of Plum. But again, no action was taken. In 1973, the Southwest Regional Planning Commission unveiled plans for a new beltway around Pittsburgh. And this beltway would connect to the Parkway East out in Penn Hills and follow that Rodi Road corridor up Rodi, cut across Penn Hills, and then down in the area around Shannon Road and cut across with a new bridge below Verona. But again, those plans never materialized, and the bridge survived one more time. The bridge also survived threats by Mother Nature. Floods, freezing, and wind often threatened the structure. On March 12, 1961, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette ran a feature on the 25th anniversary of the St. Patrick's Day flood of 1936. And I found a copy of that article. In that article, there was a gentleman by the name of Edward Jensen, who was 9 years old in 1936. And he recollected the day that the St. Patrick's Day flood hit. And he talked about the Hulton Bridge. He said, "We stood on the bridge and watched the debris and dead animals float by. The bridge shook so ominously under the pressure of the water, which rose to within feet of the roadbed, we expected it to collapse at any time. Several times we raced down to the bridge after hearing reports that it's going. I don't think we wanted it to collapse, but if it did, we wanted to be on hand when it went down." And this is a picture of the 1936 flood. This was taken on the Harmarville side upriver, looking down towards Oakmont. And you can see how high that water is by the piers, how high the river had come up. And I know that picture's sort of fuzzy, but if you look in the middle there, there's two things in the river. Those are both houses that are floating by there. That's what that is. But you know, I read that, and it brought back a childhood memory of mine. If you remember in 1972 when Hurricane Agnes blew through here and the river came up again, and we were young kids at the time, and the word went around Oakmont that the riverbed under one of the piers had washed away and the bridge was starting to lean. And I'll never forget, we got on our bikes and we rode down to the Riverside Park in the rain because we wanted to be there when the bridge went. And just like Mr. Jensen, we didn't want it to go, but we wanted to be there, but it withheld and it survived one more time. This is another picture from the 36 flood. You've probably seen this. This has been around a lot. This big tank coming down the river. But what's interesting, look up on the bridge, you see all those people standing up there. I don't think they had any concern for safety back then, you know. You wouldn't have caught me out there. But just think about that. What if that tank had come down a little further over to the middle and hit the pier? It could have taken out the bridge, but
It looks like there's a man standing on the railing.
yeah, I can't tell from my angle, but you can see. Yeah, there's a branch coming down there. But yeah, you can see the people lined up there watching the floodwaters go by. By 1964, the condition of the bridge had deteriorated. It got so bad that they had to put a 12-ton weight limit on the bridge, and truck traffic was restricted. They eventually had to close the bridge for major repairs, and it was closed for a year. It reopened on December 1st, 1965, and the communities of Oakmont and Harmer celebrated the reopening of the bridge. This month, our program is entitled They had a huge parade that started on the Hulton Bridge.
To the Oakmont Volunteer Fire Department.
The first European to behold what we call the Allegheny Valley.
This is what it looked like in 1937.
I'd like to say, to any Vietnam veteran, welcome home.
It came down between two names, Hulton and Oakmont. You see that blue house on the corner?
From downtown Pittsburgh out to the Willows.
He drove the truck over Allegheny Avenue as fast as he could
wish you would have. I forgot to come up and shut it off.
This month, our program is entitled Down by the Riverside, the Hulton Bridge.
The Oakmont Volunteer Fire Department.
The first European to behold what we call the Allegheny Valley.
This is what it looked like in 1937.
I'd like to say, to any Vietnam veteran, welcome home.
You came down between two names, Hulton and Oakmont. You see that blue house on the corner?
From downtown Pittsburgh out to the Willows.
He drove the truck over Allegheny Avenue as fast as he could.
This month, our program is entitled Down by the Riverside, the Hulton Bridge.
The Oakmont Volunteer Fire Department.
The first European to behold what we call the Allegheny Valley.
This is what it looked like in 1937.
I'd like to say, to any Vietnam veteran, welcome home.
You came down between two names, Hulton and Oakmont. You see that blue house on the corner?
From downtown Pittsburgh out to the Willows.
He drove the truck over Allegheny Avenue as fast as he could.
This month, our program is entitled Down by the Riverside, the Hulton Bridge.
To the Oakmont Volunteer Fire Department.
The first European to behold what we call the Allegheny Valley.
This is what it looked like in 1937.
I'd like to say, to any Vietnam veteran, welcome home.
It came down between two names, Hulton and Oakmont. You see that blue house on the corner?
From downtown Pittsburgh out to the Willows.
He drove the truck over Allegheny Avenue as fast as he could